this short talk, I'm going to introduce you to our digital learning motivations profile and talk a little bit about how we've been using it to support teacher learning in media literacy education. So clearly we start at the beginning, right? We share meaning through symbols that come in a variety of forms. And we are always both consumers and creators in this media-saturated environment that now is appropriately called the attention economy. So awareness of our choices becomes an absolute central practice for ordinary life. At the present moment, the context in which we're working has a lot of complicated factors all happening at the same time, like the profound understanding of the role of systemic racism in law enforcement, schools, and society, like the fake news crisis that has accelerated public interest in media literacy while reshaping its interpretation for many. Of course, the way in which we persuade each other increasingly through forms of propaganda that activate strong emotions, simplify ideas, appeal to people's deepest hopes, fears, and dreams, and attack opponents. And the rise of conspiracy culture is a fascinating new phenomenon that we're trying to wrap our heads around in relation to media literacy education. And then, not to mention, we have the threat to democracy, right? So we've got a whole bunch of contextual factors that are all operating on us and all shaping the way teachers think about their work. The thing that some media literacy educators worry about is the idea that many people think media literacy is only about combating disinformation. And of course, you're here at the NAMLE conference because you know that it's much more complicated than that. In fact, we come as members of a big tent, right? With shared and yet divergent understanding of digital media literacy, news literacy, visual literacy, digital humanities, media and information literacy, critical literacy, computational literacy, and so much more. Sometimes we act like members of a family and we appreciate and respect the nuances and differences that we have between us. Other times, it sometimes feels a little bit like a competition, right? And there's folks who are ahead and there's folks who are behind and there's insiders and there's outsiders. And yeah, that's not good. I think it really is important for newcomers, especially, to understand that the different flavors of media literacy, right? Like information literacy and digital literacy and news literacy and algorithm literacy and media literacy actually are all related to a set of knowledge domains. So for instance, if you're familiar with the domain of information literacy, it's likely that you're familiar with the ACRL framework, which is a terrific resource for teaching about digital and media literacy. And if you're using the frame of digital literacy, you're probably familiar with the concept of participatory culture. If you're into news literacy, you're probably familiar with the concept of verification. And if you're into algorithmic literacy, you're certainly aware of the concept of surveillance capitalism. And if you're into media literacy, of course, you probably understand the concept of semiotics. Now, here's the thing. With all of these flavors and all the different ways in which media literacy can be practiced, it's impossible for anyone to be an expert on all of these. So it's pretty interesting to take a look at the different models and approaches that are present and reflect on how teachers might be drawn to one or more of these models and approaches. I really like the ACRL framework for information literacy because it emphasizes the constructed nature of scholarship, right? Then there's the Digital Citizenship Resource Platform produced by the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. And this one is like, it's a college course, right? With topics like content production and computational thinking and privacy and reputation and artificial intelligence and security. There we get a sense of the gigantic amount of knowledge that is behind the way we're thinking about digital and media literacy today. And then there's the way that the International Society for Technology and Education sort of revised its conceptualization of digital citizenship. Because if you look at these 5 elements, they're really about values. This is a values orientation to providing a framework for educators, and it may be highly appealing to teachers in some contexts. And then from the DQ Institute in Singapore, another fascinating model, the colors of the rainbow with practically the kitchen sink. So whatever models or frameworks that educators use, we do understand that digital and media literacy is a moving target, right? It's changing in response to changes in technology, changes in media, changes in culture and society. And whatever you call it, right? Whatever you call it, it's likely to be best understood as a learning process, right? So I'm kind of ecumenical about what you call it. And I'm not so worried about definitions, but I am worried about pedagogy. And so I do want to counterpoint 2 different paradigms, a content-focused paradigm and a competence-focused paradigm. So some educators are really focused on the content of media literacy, and they want students to understand concepts like representation and semiotics and political economy and interpretation and meaning and media effects. And of course, those are familiar to you if you have a background in media and communication as an academic discipline. But if you have a background in education as a discipline, you may be drawn to digital and media literacy because of its pedagogical value in addressing concepts like collaboration, creativity, inquiry, metacognition, autonomy, and engagement. And in a way, what makes it challenging right now to support educators who are interested in digital and media literacy is that they may be more content focused, they may be more pedagogy focused. It's very likely that there will be some nuances between their ways of thinking about these ideas, how to support teachers who might have a very wide array of understandings of the value of digital and media literacy education. So I think it's useful to go back to Eisner in the 80s in his book, The Educational Imagination. He talked about what is taught and what is learned. And he distinguished between the explicit curriculum, that's the subjects that are taught and the knowledge and skills that are expected, that our students are expected to learn, the implicit curriculum, which is the lessons that arise from the culture and the behaviors and attitudes and expectations that characterize that culture, and the null curriculum, the knowledge and options that learners are not afforded and the skills that are not valued as part of the intellectual repertoire. In some ways, the gap-filling opportunity for media literacy educators is to address, to look square in the eye, that null curriculum and try to figure out how to bring it to students of all ages. Now, we've found a way to do that in an activity we sometimes call What's Your Why? And I guess I'll just start the activity by talking to you about what's my why, right? When I reflect on my motives for wanting to bring digital and media literacy to all learners, for me, the 2 big motives are relevance and an awareness of the constructedness of media messages. I think education should connect to people's lived experience with digital media, mass media, and popular culture, and that has always been a driving focus of my interests and my work. And at the same time, I'm aware that language, media, and technology can create unreal realities, and that it's important to be aware of the constructedness of media messages, right? To notice who's making them and why, and how they're being made, and what values they communicate. So these two primary motives have a big impact on the choices I make in the classroom, of course, and in my own scholarship and in my own research. But when we started teaching teachers at the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, now that's 9 years ago, we encountered the need to decenter ourselves, right? Because not every teacher has the same motivations as I do. And it turned out to be futile to try to motivate teachers to my motives when they were coming with their own motives, right? So that's partly why we developed the Digital Learning Motivations Profile called Set Your Motivations. And we validated the 48-item questionnaire that we used to construct this instrument in a study we published back in 2017. Let me talk a little bit about the elements of this motivations profile. Some educators, it turns out, are really interested in a focus on tools and genres and formats, right? They might be professionals, that is, interested in developing learners' knowledge, creative competencies, and practical skills as future authors, artists, experts, and professionals. If you're one of those people, please give me a thumbs up, right? But you might also be a techie, appreciating how media platforms and tools and technologies enable students to engage deeply in authentic learning. If your focus is really about connecting to the community, you might be an activist, supporting civic engagement by using media and technology to address real-world issues. Or you might be a teacher 2.0, helping learners use media and technology to connect and learn from other people. It's possible that you've got a content focus in your approach to media literacy, and you might be a tastemaker, wanting students to appreciate culturally important media and history, the arts, literature, and sciences. Or you might be a professor, wanting students to gain knowledge and skills by using media and technology to advance learning. Some educators we have found have a focus on texts and audience. They might be alts, challenging learners with alternative ways of finding, using, and thinking about media that's off the beaten path. They want students to encounter ideas that are outside of the mainstream media culture. But some people are more like trendsetters. They want to meet students where they live by connecting the classroom with the media and technology that they use every day. Some media literacy educators have a systems focus, like the watchdogs who want to help learners think about the economic and political context of media and technology as systems that shape our lives, or demystifiers who want to pull back the curtain on how media and technology are constructed by asking how and why questions. Now, finally, there's this group of media literacy educators whose focus is really centered on the learner. Some of them are spirit guides, helping learners use media and technology in ways that support people's social and emotional well-being. And others really are motivators, cultivating students' autonomy as independent learners. What we've found is that when people take the 48-item quiz, they discover they might have a mix of motivations, right? They might be a little bit of an activist and a little bit of a tastemaker. It turns out I have discovered that over time, at different time periods and in different contexts, different of these motivations become more or less important to me, right? And so in the next part of this live conversation, I'm going to take a look at the relationship between people's motives and their choices in the classroom. I'm going to take a look at these 12 motivational profiles and think about how they relate to instructional practices in the classroom. It should be fun.